This is Ian Cameron in conjunction with thesportsgeek.com. We're going to look at CFL DraftKings for Week 9 in the Canadian Football League and see what players can get a winning lineup for you in CFL DK action this week. Let's start looking at the quarterback position. Really, you've got your usual suspects, usual cast of characters topping the quarterback board this week. Mike Riley, 11,000. Bo Levi Mitchell, 10,600. Zach Collaros, 10,100. Henry Burris, 10,000. Jonathan Jennings finally getting respect, moving on up the board to 9,500. I think he's still undervalued, believe it or not, at that price. Jonathan Jennings has just been fantastic. I know he's facing a Calgary defense that's pretty good. They've gotten really good play from their cornerback tandem of Seontae Evans and Tommy Campbell. It's basically what made Fred Bennett, the veteran cornerback, expendable for this Calgary team. They traded him to Saskatchewan earlier this week. That being said, you can't deny how good Jonathan Jennings has been. I mean, last game, 28.6 DK points. He has been terrific. Game in, game out. You look at what he's done. He's had 40, 37, 19, 28 DK points in his last 4 starts, 23.8 DK points per game this season for him, 11 touchdown passes, over 2,000 passing yards already for John Jennings, 9,500. I think he's a consideration that you have to take at the quarterback position this week. And I think if you're going to pay up for one of the big guys, Riley, the guys that are above 10,000 in salary this week, Zach Collaros would be that guy for me. Hamilton Ticats quarterback. I think if you're going to pay for someone in that 5-figure range, he's the guy at 10.1K. I think he's going to feast on Saskatchewan. He got the ring rusts, so to speak, out of his system last week against BC. Really played good in the second half. I mean, the first half was a little bit of a struggle for him, but he got going in the second half. 27.5 DK points for Zach Collaros last week. Pretty good considering just what a slow start he got off to. 2 touchdown passes, 331 pass yards, 92 quarterback rating. I think he's going to be even better, and this Saskatchewan team is really in rough shape right now. They're not playing good on the field. Their defense is struggling on the field. Their offense isn't sustaining drives, leading to that defense being tired out throughout the later stages of the game. So I think Zach Collaros and this Hamilton team off back-to-back losses now. Ken Austin's furious with this team having such slow starts week in and week out. Think about it. Last 3 weeks, they've gotten behind 24-6 to Edmonton, 34-0 to Winnipeg, and 32-12 against BC at halftime. That's unacceptable. Ken Austin says we've got to stop getting off to slow starts. We need better first half performances. So I'm expecting a complete 60-minute effort here from the team and from the quarterback specifically. So I think Collaros, even at the high price, if I'm going to pay for a guy in the 10K range, I'm paying for Zach Collaros this week, the Hamilton quarterback, no doubt about that. Down the list, maybe you trust Logan Kilgore at 6,600 to right the ship. I don't know if I will be willing to trust him, but Edmonton's defense played better last week, but that was against a sad sack Montreal offense. I'm not sure if that's an clear indication that things are all right with that secondary, but I think Logan Kilgore, if you're going to take a flyer and reach down into the bargain bin from a quarterback perspective this week, Logan Kilgore would probably be that guy at 6,600. Again, Mike Riley at 11,000, but he's the highest priced quarterback for a reason. I wouldn't touch him, even though I do think he's got the potential to have a pretty good day against a suspect and banged up Toronto Argonauts secondary, which did get shredded for some big plays by Matt Nichols and that Winnipeg team last week. All right, at running back, Jerome Messam, again, top running back in terms of pricing, 7,900. Can't argue with that. Not great production, though, last game, 19.3 DK points. I don't know if I would go with him this week. BC's defense, particularly against the run, can be a little bit stingy. CJ Gable didn't do anything last week running the football for Hamilton against them. Now, Messam and the Stampeders commit to running the football more than Hamilton does, but I probably stay away from Jerome Messam this week. Going down the list, I think Jeremiah Johnson might be a decent value option, 6,600 for the BC Lions. He's healthy again, and he's back at it in the running game for this team. To me, it's not a great selection this week at the running back spot. To me, Jeremiah Johnson's an option, there's no doubt. Maybe Brandon Whitaker as well of the Toronto Argonauts, 6,500, not a bad selection. John White as well, running back, 7,100. John White did not have a bad game, did not have a good game, rather, last week against the Montreal Alouettes. Had a couple fumbles, including a big one down near the goal line. He wasn't happy. I think maybe he comes back with a big-time effort, motivated effort here against what's a Toronto defense that, you can run on them a little bit. So I think John White, Jeremiah Johnson are really the two I would look at in terms of running backs this week. Beyond that, it's a little bit more of a reach. I'd probably stick with those two this week, either White or Jeremiah Johnson in terms of running backs in your lineup this week. Wide receivers, as usual, look who's at the top of the list. It's Bowman, Walker, and Williams, two top receivers from Edmonton, and Chris Williams. Well, Chris Williams, though, is not performing to the level he did early in the season. I mean, he got off to that unbelievable start, 41, 37, 44 DK points his first 3 weeks. You look at what he's done since then. 2 DK points against Saskatchewan, 16 against Toronto, 19 against Edmonton. Yeah, that's okay production, but considering the price you're paying, I don't know if that's a value selection on Chris Williams again this week. Same goes with Bowman and Walker. They have not been focused quite a bit as usual, especially Bowman. Bowman's actually had some quiet performances. Walker has gotten going a little bit lately, but again, no bargains to pick either Bowman or Walker and place them in your lineup. Emmanuel Arsenault to me is still underpriced. I mean, $8,500 for a guy that's been doing what he's been doing the last couple of weeks. I mean, 21, 19, and then 30 DK points for him last week in a big-time performance against Hamilton. He's worth a look at $8,500. I like Naaman Roosevelt. I do. But I'm staying away from him. I've almost recommended Naaman Roosevelt for Saskatchewan every week, and he's got a decent price again this week at $8,300, but I don't like this situation at all for Saskatchewan. Their offense is in tatters. The offensive line has had injury issues, plugging players in different spots all season long. Darian Durant, since returning from injury, looks a little bit old, over the hill. Not saying he can't get it back, but he hasn't looked like the old Darian Durant of years ago. He's looked timid. He hasn't been running the football as much. He's been inaccurate with the football. So for that reason, not sure I would look toward Naaman Roosevelt this week. Stay away from him. I think Deontay Spencer, $7,800, really, really, really good value option at wide receiver for the Argos this week. To me, Logan Kilgore looked for Deontay Spencer every single time he was looking to throw the football. Deontay Spencer would be one of the guys that Logan Kilgore, the young Toronto quarterback filling in for the injured what else is new, again, he's like, what are you, Ricky Ray? Are you made of cotton candy? Plastic? I mean, my goodness, you can't stay healthy. He's injured again for this Toronto team. So Logan Kilgore's in there at quarterback. And as a result, he's got to find some receivers quickly that he can trust, and Deontay Spencer looks like one of those guys. I mean, last week he returns from injury for the Argos. 34 DK points for Deontay Spencer in that game against Winnipeg. 146 receiving yards, 11 catches, 1 touchdown. Big-time performance. Definitely a welcome return to this Argos receiving core, and Logan Kilgore seemed to develop instant chemistry with him. I think Spencer's a great option, almost a must in your lineup this week, wide receiver from a wide receiver perspective at $7,800. I think he's got the potential to have another solid output here this week. You go on down the list. Kenny Shaw, another decent option for the Argos, $6,500. Again, for a guy that seems to be producing for this team more often than not. I mean, last game, 12.3, but before that, some big games for Kenny Shaw. He had 25 DK points north of that in 2 straight games prior to that Winnipeg game last week. So still, at the price you're paying, $6,500 for Kenny Shaw, that guy is definitely worth a look as far as I'm concerned. Again, Edmonton's secondary still suspect. I know they looked much better last week, but got to factor in who they were playing. An inept, pathetic at times Montreal offense. A Montreal offense that hasn't done much all season. In fact, 18 points or less for Montreal's offense in 5 of their last 6 games. You can't put too much stock into Edmonton's secondary for that performance, so maybe it's a chance for Kenny Shaw to get going. And I'd look toward Hamilton's receivers in this game for sure. I think they're going to put the foot down, want to kick the snot out of someone after 2 straight losses. I think Kolaros is going to have a big game. You obviously got to target, maybe a Brandon Banks at 6,800 because they're using him in the offense a bit more now in addition to returning kicks. Andy Fantuz at 7,200, Chad Owens at 7,100. You target those guys. Tasker, it goes without saying, at 8,400 is worth a look. All of those guys, Tasker, Owens, Fantuz, Banks, sprinkle those guys in lineups this week because I think Hamilton's going to have a chance to go off in terms of offensive performance this week against the reeling Saskatchewan Roughriders who are limping their way into the hammer to take on the Ticats this weekend. All right, DST to wrap things up on our CFL Week 9 DraftKings look ahead. Lions, the highest priced defense this week at 5,300, but I still think they're playable at that current number. Don't forget, you got Chris Rainey returning kicks. He seems to be good for a return touchdown almost every week, or at least a good return every week. That's included in the DST output. Calgary's offense is good. I respect Bo Levi Mitchell. He's a great quarterback, but this team's offense hasn't been as sharp on the road as they've been at home. They're in BC this week, big game out west. They've been outgained, actually, the Stampeders, total yards-wise, in terms of total yards in 3 of their 4 road games. So that tells you the offense is very good, but on the road they've been a little bit less productive. So I kind of like BC as a defensive option this week. Hamilton, to me, is the next best option in terms of defense. Hamilton, 4,700. It's a buy low with this Hamilton defense. People are going to see that they gave up over 30 points to Edmonton, over 30 points to Winnipeg, and then 45 points last week to BC. This is a big step down in class now. Hamilton's back home. They're fired up. They know they want a big win, a big performance. That defense is licking their wounds after the last couple weeks, and Saskatchewan's offense looks broken right now. They've got some serious issues on that side of the football right now. Offensive line's not getting the job done. Darian Durant has not been anywhere close to the same quarterback since returning from injury, and now you're seeing that discount now with Hamilton's defense as low as $4,700 on draft, and look toward that Hamilton defense this week to have a bounce-back performance at home against Saskatchewan. So as far as in Hamilton, 1 and 1A and 1B, I should say, those would be my 2 best DST options for your lineup. My look at CFL Week 9 DraftKings for the upcoming slate. I'm Ian Cameron for the SportsGeek. Always back to you filling out your CFL Week 9 DraftKings lineups, and we'll be back next week.